Since the 12th century, there has been an ongoing conflict between Ireland and the UK. In this conflict, thousands of children and adults have died. The conflict has had many rises and falls, however, most of the battles have occurred in the 20th century. This war originated from mostly sectarian reasons or from power, i.e., land. The war was between the Irish Republican Army, IRA, and Sinn Féin, the parliamentary wing, and the British government forces. The war involved many different tactics like guerrilla warfare, ambushes, assassinations, and reprisals. The main war began when Ireland declared that they no longer wanted to be part of Britain, but the conflict has been going on for much longer than that. Today we'll be talking about the Irish conflict. Beginning. Ireland was an independent Catholic nation until the 1700s, when England and Scottish Protestants invaded and settled. The Irish, who disliked this, were called the Nationalists. Those who weren't averse to British rule were the Unionists. For centuries there had been battles over the UK's claim to Ireland, but none had resulted in open war until the Easter Rising.
The Easter Rising took place on the 24th of April 1916, when Irish nationalists seized buildings in Dublin, notably the post office, for communication lines. It resulted in 5 days of fighting and over 300 deaths, including 220 civilians, 64 nationalists, and 134 British police and soldiers. The Irish nationalists were forced to surrender after the arrival of more British troops. The rebels, or nationalists, were imprisoned without trial and executed. This fueled support for Sinn Féin and freedom from British rule. This is called a colonial conflict because Ireland were trying to
Early growth. Michael Collins, who was a leader in both Sinn Féin and the Irish Republican Army, led the army against Britain, signalling the beginning of the War of Independence from 1919 to 1922.
Michael Collins forces Britain to negotiate, and the Government of Ireland is formed as an attempt to pacify the nationalists. Two parliaments are also formed, one in Dublin and one in Belfast. The Dublin Parliament establishes the Irish Free State. All power given to Ireland still leaves Northern Ireland part of the British Empire. But the nationalists oppose this partition. They want total freedom.
Deadlock, the Civil War, 1922 to 1926. Many nationalists still oppose the partition. Most form the Free State Army, and they fight their former IRA comrades. A civil war has begun. Fighting lasts just over 1 year, and Michael Collins, leader of both Sinn Féin and the IRA, is killed. The provisional government stops the fighting
and imprisons over 1,000 rebels without trial. The leader of the Free State Army, Eamon de Valera, splits from his Republican colleagues and founds the Fianna Fáil Party, part of Irish politics. In 1948, England decided to enact the Anglo-Irish Treaty, an act to repeal the Executive Authority External Relations Act 1936 to declare that the description of the state shall be the Republic of Ireland, and to enable the President to exercise the executive power or any executive function of the state in or in connection with its external relationship. 21st of December 1948.
This put an end to the Civil War, but later in 1974, the IRA started a bombing campaign in England. The Free State Army executed 5 IRA leaders, and then the bombing stopped.
Looking for a way out, leaders of Britain and Ireland meet to discuss the situation in 1985. This resulted in the Anglo-Irish Agreement. It gave Dublin some control over Northern Ireland, but the Unionists were outraged. The agreement was never fully implemented. Then in 1993, the British Prime Minister and the Irish leader met, and the Downing Street Declaration was issued. The people of Northern Ireland were free to decide their own future. Representatives of various groups met, including Sinn Féin, which came on the condition that the IRA declare a ceasefire. Peace talks began again in 1996. George Mitchell, a senator, suggested disarmament, and the IRA breaks ceasefire, settling the dispute or resolving the conflict. In 1998, there were talks about the Good Friday Agreement. Peace talks are announced, which Sinn Féin attends, and the IRA announces a ceasefire. After months, settlement is reached.
The Good Friday Agreement. Ireland shall not be one united country without the consent of a majority in Northern Ireland. The people of Northern Ireland have the right to call themselves either Irish or British. A multi-party assembly will be elected to govern the community. A North-South Council will be set up to consider areas of mutual interest. An Anglo-Irish Council will be set up to consider areas of mutual interest. All people shall have basic human rights, civil rights, and equality. Linguistics, diversity to be recognised. Irish to be taught in all schools. Parliamentary groups to be decommissioned within 2 years. A gradual reduction in the number of security forces deployed in Northern Ireland. To work towards having an unarmed police force. Political prisoners to be released providing the ceasefire is maintained.
As the Irish conflict drew to a close, people began to realise that they weren't fighting to be free of Britain anymore. They were fighting for the power to make their own decisions. A conflict that lasted over 80 years, with over 1,500 Irish and British deaths in the first 5 years alone. At last the Irish could say they were truly free.